Hey everybody, it's Dave Specter in Chicago. Welcome to another episode of the Blues from the Inside Out podcast, where we changed the name to Blues from the Inside In, as we're all, sheltering in place during this pandemic. And wow, this is great. Elvin Bishop is with us. Hey, Elvin.
How you doing, Dave?
Hey, man, it's so great to see you. It's been too long.
Yeah. You doing all right?
I'm bored, frustrated, but
you guys locked down pretty good there, are you?
Doing a few outdoor gigs, but I'm in Chicago and it's end of October. It's getting chilly.
Out. The hawk is coming.
Right, man. And speaking of October, I wanted to wish you a happy early birthday.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I think your birthday's in a couple days. But you're in California, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Marin?
Yeah.
Nice. So is there much music activity there, like with outdoor shows? A little bit? Any?
Well, not a damn bit.
No, really.
They're starting to once in a while do things, since all the shopping malls are pretty much empty anyway. The parking lots, they're doing like drive-in type things there where they
right.
They charge by the carload and people come and they give them an FM frequency, and that's where the sound comes from,
Wow.
But it ain't a good substitute,
Yeah, it's a mess. Well, on a positive note, you have a great new album out that I just got and have been listening to, 100 Years of Blues with your old buddy Charlie Musselwhite.
Yeah.
Congrats on that. And you were telling me you recorded some of that at your studio. Your home studio?
Yeah, we call it Hog Heaven Studio.
Hog Heaven, all right. Yeah, you got a great live sound on it, and it sounds like you're listening to a live show.
Well, you know what it was, man. It kind of like we both came from places where when we first heard blues, before blues came to Chicago, there wasn't this formula of the bass and drums and all that,
Right.
It was pretty much just guys sitting down playing. And it only gradually coalesced into that kind of stereotype form where you had to have a bass player and a drummer. And then as years went on and gangs and people got more desperate and had a harder edge on it,
Yeah.
So this all represents the time before that, basically.
Yeah. So you grew up, you were born in California and you moved to Iowa for a while and then Oklahoma. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So, is Oklahoma where you started hearing blues live?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear too much of it live. As a matter of fact, damn little. It was highly discouraged for people of different backgrounds to get together down there. It was way before civil rights, and
right.
Charlie and I were just talking about this the other day, and what we really have a lot in common is that we listen to WLAC a lot and XERB and the big 50,000 watt blues stations that came on in our part of the country after all the local stations closed down at midnight.
Yeah.
Listen to John R. and Herman Grizzard and Hoss Allen and those guys, And that really was the only way you were going to hear any blues.
Yeah. So
and even when we got to Chicago, the only way the average white person is going to hear any blues is if they go to a folk festival.
Yep.
They always had a token black artist,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the early 60s. So if you want to hear blues, you got to go to the black club,
And you came to Chicago in 59, is that right?
60, yeah.
60.
You just about, yeah.
Yeah. And I heard you had a choice. You got a scholarship and you had a choice to either go to Northwestern or University of Chicago.
I got lucky. I didn't know the difference,
Yeah.
University of Chicago turned out to be on an island in the middle of the South Side.
Yeah.
And it was just tremendous. Within a week of the time I was there, I was over at Pepper's Lounge, Hey, you want to hear the personnel of the first blues band I ever saw?
Yes.
This is a guy who only knew blues from the radio. Muddy Waters, Otis Spann, James Cotton, Willie Big Eyes Smith, Pat Hare, and a bass player.
Oh, man.
I said, damn, these blues bands are pretty cool, you know?
And you were what, 18 or 19?
17.
17. And
Yeah.
they let you in? Did they card you?
As you see me now on Zoom, it's hard to imagine I was ever 17, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. Now, when you were thinking about coming to Chicago for college, were you able to come and visit first, or did you just come here sight unseen?
No. There wasn't none of that going on. It wasn't like I was a highly recruited quarterback or anything. As a matter of fact, you know, it's a lucky thing. I got a scholarship, and it was a lucky thing because my family didn't have any money. My family's just farmer, can see, and my folks had been through the Depression, and so that education was a big thing. You know, nobody in my family ever been to college.
Wow.
So don't mess this up, you know.
Yeah.
The idea of me getting into music was not a popular thing in the family at the time.
And you were already playing guitar at the time when you came to Chicago? In
a manner of speaking. Yeah. I was more or less what they call square as a pool table and twice as green, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like I didn't have too many clues, you know.
Yeah.
It was just what I could catch by ear, and nobody's musical in the family. There wasn't no real good musicians in the neighborhood to show me anything. I definitely couldn't hang out with any blues guys.
Yeah.
No. It was pretty rough getting started, you know.
Right. And you met Paul Butterfield pretty early on when you moved to Chicago?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I had a lot of good luck, you know.
Wow.
I was walking around Hyde Park checking out the neighborhood, you know, and there's this guy sitting on some steps drinking a quart of beer and playing blues on the guitar. I said, wow, this must be my type of guy, you know, and I went over and made friends with him.
Wow.
Went on from there, you know.
Wow, that's amazing.
He didn't even play harp when I first met him, to speak a little bit maybe, but once he made up his mind, within 6 months,
yeah,
he was gone, you know.
So he was playing guitar and singing on the steps when you saw him? Man. And did you guys start hanging out and going to clubs together pretty soon after that?
We went to a lot of parties in Hyde Park, and then started going to the clubs, you know. Yeah.
You know, I'm fascinated from two angles. One, I'm obviously a blues musician and a huge fan and, you know, pseudo-musicologist, but I'm also from Chicago. And I only really caught the tail end of the South Side scene starting in the 80s. So I want to ask you a lot about the South Side and then about Old Town, because I live really close to Old Town and Wells Street, where I know you guys used to play all the time.
Right.
So, like, I know there were 100 clubs on the South Side back then?
Yes. I'd say between the South Side and the West Side, there's well over 100 blues clubs.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
And, I mean, blues was the music of choice of the black population, just like hip hop is now, you know?
Yeah.
It was happening.
And the crowds in the club were like younger black people and older black people, a wide age range, or mostly older?
Mostly, well, it was a lot of middle-aged people, you know, from the South. And there was quite a few young people that came too, not real young. The teenagers and the real young people like that were all getting into Motown at the time, you know?
Yep.
Or Stax, you know. But when I got there in '60, it was pretty much just blues.
Yeah.
Straight blues. As the '60s went on, it changed over, and in the 70s, it got pretty grim. You know, the gangs ran people out of the clubs.
Yeah.
Ran all the blues lovers out of the clubs. And 70s and 80s, I don't know, it seemed like it started to pick back up a little bit, but they had that thing where they tore down the whole South Side, just about, you know. When was that?
You mean during the riots, or?
No, I'm talking about
when they built the projects?
So-called urban renewal, probably.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, but when I got there, the South Side was like a big, nice southern town or something, you know?
Really?
And it had a good feeling about it, and people weren't just horribly desperate and feeling bad about things. You know, they were pretty optimistic. It was better than where they came from, you know, in the South.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of good black-owned businesses, and things were thriving pretty good. You know, it was a pleasant place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's still pockets. I know Hyde Park is still a pretty nice area. I mean, the U of C's still there, and it's coming back a little. But some of the surrounding areas are pretty rough. Brownsville's coming back a little.
We went down to did some gig in Chicago, and me, the guitar player in my band, Bob Welsh, were talking about a place we used to eat like a long time ago in Chicago. Valois. You ever eat there?
Malloy's?
Valois, Valois. It's on 53rd Street.
No.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was still there, so it was cool.
Did you used to go to Roosevelt Road, Nate's Deli? Remember that?
No, that don't ring a bell with me.
Okay. I think Muddy used to go there because he liked kosher salami.
Huh.
But
I played some places on Roosevelt Road with Hound Dog, I think, but I don't remember the name of the place.
Well, Eddie Shaw's place, the 1815 Club, was on Roosevelt Road. Did you play there?
It could have been. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah. So talk about some of the other early shows you went to when you first got to town. You said you went to some parties, and do you remember any other club gigs that stood out that just blew you?
Yeah. I used to go to Teresa's and the Blue Flame.
Yeah.
And a place I think it was called the Castle Rock.
Yep.
On the West, Otis Rush. And I remember going to a Magic Sam gig.
Yeah.
And getting kicked out 2 or 3 times, and just every time they kicked me out, I'd go around back, and finally Magic Sam noticed what was happening. He just took me in the dressing room and let me sit there, you know.
Why'd they kick you out, Elvin?
So I was only 17.
Oh, man. That's a drag. Yeah, tell me about Magic Sam. He's one of my heroes, and I wish
what a beautiful guy. Yeah. Just, it's amazing. It was like blues heaven, man, when I got to Chicago. Big Bill Hill, I remember him being on a show, and the Big Bill Hill said, if you ride around in your car enjoying yourself immensely, come on down to the Club Copacabana and enjoy yourself immensely. Magic Singing Sam and his big band, the trio, you know.
Yeah.
Shaky Jake said, old woman can't do nothing for him, but tell him where a young woman went. You know.
Yeah. So the famous DJ Big Bill Hill, that's who you're talking about, for our listeners and viewers that aren't hip. I know you're a big Earl Hooker fan, and talk about seeing Earl Hooker. And, you know, I know that I read an interview with you, and you said that, you know, the records did not really capture his power and his genius.
No, he was, I think, I'd say without a doubt, the most respected musician in Chicago among blues musicians. He, man, I've seen him at Pepper's. He was the type of guy, people had so much respect for him. He didn't even ask if he could sit in. He would just jump up on the bandstand, and whoever was playing guitar would just hand it to him.
Yeah.
You know?
And was he mostly playing, or was he singing a lot too? Because I think of him as somebody who didn't sing a lot, you know?
I don't think he sang too much unless it was his gig or he was doing a record and there were one, you know. But he could play so good he didn't need to sing.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him get up there with Little Mac or Detroit Jr. or one of those guys that played at Peppers like on Tuesdays, you know, and he got up and they were doing What I Say by Ray Charles. That was out then, you know, and it couldn't have been 45 minutes, but it seemed like it to me. He just kept going, and you could close your eyes and see Ray Charles singing it.
Really?
Yeah. That's what I loved about him. He used the slide on his little finger, a small slide. Most guys use it somewhere in the middle where they got support from the other fingers. Mm-hmm. He was a man about it. And he would put it on his little finger, and that still left him 3 fingers to play. He didn't have to retune his guitar.
Yeah.
He still had 3, which is more than Django Reinhardt ever had.
Yeah.
And he would go to the trouble of figuring out exactly what the melodies were instead of just sort of wanging at an open chord, you know?
Yeah.
And he was miles ahead of everybody else.
And was he mostly playing the Les Paul? Do you remember?
He was one of those guys like Hubert. It didn't seem to matter what guitar he played.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him play, I think, you ever see a National electric guitar? It was one of the cheaper pawn shop type of electric guitars, you know, and they had those pickups that looked like somebody took a pin and stuck the holes in a sardine can or something, you know? And he just made it sound great.
Yeah. Wow. And you became friends with Smokey Smothers, Little Smokey. Yeah. I knew Little Smokey pretty well. I also knew Big Smokey pretty well.
Yeah.
Sweet guy, man.
Otis, yeah.
What a guy. Sweet guys.
We used to, speaking of that urban renewal stuff, I used to, when I first got there, Smokey was the first guy that invited me over to his house. And he lived at 42nd and 42nd Street and something down there. And he lived on the 2nd floor, and Lee Shot Williams lived on the 1st floor. And I went there, back there in the 70s, after the urban renewal and all that happened, and there was one building standing for miles around.
Wow.
Lee Shot was on the 1st floor, and Smokey was on the 2nd floor.
Man.
That was it, yeah. But he was a beautiful guy. He played it a lot at the Blue Flame.
Yeah.
39th and Drexel.
Okay.
And Span lived right around there somewhere, and Muddy did too, I think.
Yeah, I think Muddy lived at 43rd and Lake Park.
Yeah.
And so did Smokey kind of take you under his wing? Was he kind of like one of your mentors?
He really did. He went out of his way to help me out. He was a beautiful guy.
Cool. Yeah, he was one of the Chicago guys that really took, I think, the Albert King influence.
He was the first guy in Chicago that could play Don't Throw Your Love on Me So Strong, which was Albert's first hit, you know?
Yeah.
That was in the days when nobody had ever seen Albert King. He hadn't got out of St. Louis yet, or down south, wherever he lived at the time.
Yeah.
Nobody knew he was left-handed, and everybody said, I can't get those licks, you know? But Smokey just dug in and got him, you know?
Yeah.
And he could not only do that, he could sing it and play it and be on stage, and you'd walk in and how you doing, man? What have you been? You'd hold a conversation and still do all that stuff at the same time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just in a conversation with Johnny Bergen about when we thought like the Albert King influence started to hit Chicago musicians big. And I was guessing it was probably after like Crosscut Saw became a a big tune, and Born Under a Bad Sign, which was what, like 67, 68?
That's Stax times, yeah.
Yeah.
The one, he was on a little label from St. Louis called Bob, and he had a lot of, that were hits in the little blues world then, like I Walked All Night Long Looking for My Angel Child, and Don't Lie to Me, and a bunch of stuff like that before he ever went to
right.
Those were all known in Chicago, but just there wasn't too many that could really play his style at all.
Yeah. Talk about the first time you saw Otis Rush.
Oh, man. Yeah. Otis was real nice to me, too. The guys were just amazingly friendly and nice, way more than you would expect,
Yeah.
Charlie's theory is that they were nicer to us because we were from kind of down home,
Yeah.
For one thing, we could understand what they were saying, and a lot of the other guys couldn't, But it's like Smokey, man. He would make sure I got the stuff. I remember being over at his house. I might have told you this story before, but it really was true. He'd be cooking a pot of neck bones or black-eyed peas or something, ham hocks, and we'd sit there, and the MO was he would teach me the rhythm part of a song, and he would play the lead.
Yeah. And
then if I really was doing good, he'd show me some of the lead, whatever I could catch on to. But when I got the rhythm part down, he'd call in the neighbors and we'd play it for him. Boy, that was fun. But if I was being hard-headed about picking the place up, he'd say, "Come here." He'd go in the kitchen and raise up that lid and say, "Smell that." That's what I said. "Oh man, that smells good. Can I have some?" Slam it. He'd say, "When you get the party, when you get it right,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, Otis, I'd go to his house, and he was a cool guy, very generous. First thing he'd do is go up in the cabinet and get keep a pint of Old Granddad up there. He'd pour us both a shot. We'd take a shot and then get down to business.
Really?
Wow. It was more just the feeling of being there with Otis was what I was getting out of it more so because he was left-handed too, and so it's pretty hard to for me at the time to get too much out of it,
And was this how long after like 1960 was this? Were you still in school or had you quit school?
Yeah, some of both.
Yeah.
This went on, from like 61 on up to 63 or 4.
Uh-huh.
I started getting gigs, Sammy Lawhorn kind of set me up with a gig with Junior Wells.
Wow.
But because Junior got a gig with Muddy going down south for a couple of weeks, and he said, "Well, Junior wants you to play with him, so come on over." And I went to his house, and he taught me all of Junior's tunes, or as good as I could catch them, his repertoire. And I remember he had the ones you always hear him doing, and he had a couple of tunes. He had this one. You ever hear this one, "You're the One" by Bobby Bland?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, a bunch of tunes like that, and then maybe some Junior Parker tunes or something like that. But so he sent me down there. And I went to the Blue Flame on the Tuesday, and Junior gives me a look like, "Who the fuck are you?" I said, "My name is Bishop. Sammy sent me down to take his place." Junior goes, "He did." He took me in the back room and kind of got the harp out and ran the tunes past me, and he saw that I had some kind of familiarity with it, and I guess he figured, well, hell, at that late date, he couldn't do nothing about it anyway, so he let me play with him for 2 weeks. I did the best I could, and it was a great experience.
Wow.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah. Was Junior pretty slicked out then, wearing the sharp suits and hats back then?
Oh, yeah, man. Nice big process, and smoking a cigarette, blowing the smoke out through his nose, you know.
Yeah.
He was cool, way cool. I was really lucky. I got a chance to play with Hound Dog quite a few times. And J.T. Brown, you ever know who he was?
Yeah, great sax player, yeah. Wow. What about Wolf? Did you go see him a lot?
No, I didn't. I saw him a couple of times. I talked to him a little bit, but he wasn't real friendly to me.
Okay.
When I saw him, the doctor had made him quit drinking.
Oh, man.
And so he made all his band members sit on the edge of the bandstand on breaks and drink coffee.
Oh.
Or at least they had coffee cups in their hand.
Yeah.
So he, you know.
And Charlie was in Chicago this time too, wasn't he, in the early 60s?
I think he got there a few years after I did, maybe middle 60s on. Yeah.
And did you guys connect when you were in Chicago together at some point? Were you friends?
We were acquainted.
Okay.
I met him, and we, you know, we got along good, and I always liked his music. And when I met him, where me and Charlie's paths crossed most of the time was we both were kind of friends with Big Joe Williams.
Yeah.
And Charlie worked at Kester's record store, you know.
Yep.
And I'd see him up there now and then.
Yeah, I used to work there too.
You did?
I did.
No kidding.
But I never threw a phone at Kester like Charlie did.
Yeah, that's one of Charlie's favorite memories. Is I beat him up.
Yeah, he was. He's still around. He's got a new. He's got a. You know, he sold the record market, but he opened another store. He's got a store on the north side.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool store. I think Muscle lived in the basement, maybe Big Joe too.
Yep.
But I used to go around to the parties with Big Joe. Boy, he was something. He was a mess.
Was he? Yeah.
Cool.
Big drinker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fearless too. Hit on anybody's old lady right in front of him. We got ran out of a couple of parties. I remember just you wouldn't think a guy that old and that fat could get over a fence so quick. You know.
Wow.
The first week I was at the University of Chicago, I made friends with all the black guys that worked at the cafeteria, and they were all blues fans. They took me down to Pepper's. That's how I found out about that.
Wow.
Yeah, and they took me to a lot of different clubs. But it was cool in Chicago at that time. Like I said, it was just kind of coming together, the blues band format becoming kind of a stereotype. You know, you ever listen to some of Wolf or Muddy's old records? You see, these guys, all the drummers came from jazz. That's the only place there was any drummers. You know.
Yeah.
And there was a huge variety in the approaches they took and the way they played. Like if you ever listen to Francis Clay or S.P. Leary or those guys, you know, it wasn't just 2 and 4 and bang the shit out of it, you know.
Right.
It was a lot of different melodic approaches going on, you know.
Yeah, and they could swing.
Not only that, but there was a lot of guys left over from far back as you want to go. I remember going to guys' houses that lived up in attics up over a cleaners like on 43rd Street somewhere, and the guy was from the 20s. He's showing me how to play Mean Old Frisco and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
And rehearsing with, I'd be hanging out at Hound Dog's place, and Sleepy John Estes was some kind of relation of his. We'd stop in there, you know, Hammy Nixon and those guys.
Wow. Back to the new record, Elvin. My favorite song is What the Hell.
There you go.
Man, you hit the nail right on the head. Telling it like it is and pulling no punches. Thank you.
Yeah.
For that. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you like it.
just give us a brief history of when you started the band with Paul, and tell us about some of the first times you played on Wells Street. Big John's, I know, was one of your house gigs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's when it kind of became when the band became a steady thing. That's when we had a job that we could count on, you know.
Yeah. And how did
at that time you could make a lot of progress quick, because as you know, in Chicago it's from 9 till 4 in the morning every night, 5 on Saturday. And at that time it was like, at our level, it's 45 minutes on, 15 minutes off every hour. Wow. That's an awful lot of practice right there.
Yeah.
6 nights a week.
And did that start in the mid-64 or so, or do you remember?
I think it was a little earlier than that, maybe.
Really? And how, I mean, what it must have been.
Don't quote me, because I'm no good with dates and stuff.
No, it's cool. But the Old Town Well Street scene was, you know, was it like all of a sudden playing for a new crowd? Because you got like young white kids there and hipsters, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And how did they, I mean, did they just fall in love with the music right away, or was it like, what is this? Never heard anything like this before.
It was time. It was time.
Yeah.
You know how beautiful blues is, and there's this huge, you know, white crowd, and they've been living in the same country for hundreds of years, never met to any extent. And it was the time and place.
Right. Do you remember, because I know the folk scene was pretty big around there too. Mm-hmm. Did you go to some of the folk clubs on Wells Street and make friends with any of the musicians that weren't playing blues?
Not too much. I had a tendency to not be too interested in anything but blues at the time, you know.
Right.
Bloomfield was really heavy into the folk scene, you know. He'd been doing that for years.
Yeah. And there was also jazz on Wells Street. I know the Plug Nickel was there. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. What's the other one? Oh, the Village Gate. That wasn't in. I guess that was in North Beach at the time, maybe.
Village Gate was in Greenwich Village, New York. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, what am I thinking of? The one in
Gate of Horn.
Gate of Horn. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, my folks used to go there.
That's that. You ever hear that record that Memphis Slim did, the live record there with Matt Murphy and all that? Yeah, that was cool.
Cool. So I also wanted to ask you, because Paul's band with you and Jerome and Sam and Bloomfield, it was an integrated band, which, you know, to me is very cool, and I imagine pretty rare for the day. And you guys were going on the road, and talk about that. And you know,
a lot of times, most times we had to stay in black hotels because the white ones just wasn't going to allow it, you know. And
wow,
you know, 68 or so, when they had all the riots and everything, you know, around the country, it seemed like every time we get into it, it would have one of those. I remember being in Cleveland and playing at a place called The Cave, and the guys had to go out and get us sandwiches because it wasn't safe for us to leave the hotel, you know. We were right down in the middle of it.
Wow. And were you playing in black clubs when you were on the road mostly?
Mm-mm.
No.
It was just starting to, it was when, I guess, I don't know if it was college radio or something, but the college got hip to us first before the general population, you know. But for that was the timeline. The colleges got hip to us.
Yeah.
Then Bill Graham came up with the idea of doing mixed bills, you know, with blues featured.
Yeah.
Within a year of the big success of the Fillmore Ballroom, there was one of those old ballrooms that it was taken over by the hippies, you know.
Yeah.
In every major town in in the United States, and there was our next circuit. And it was a big breakthrough for blues guys because it was the first time they were able to play any place but a ghetto club.
Yeah.
And it made touring feasible for them, you know. They could hook gigs up and make better money.
Yeah, I mean, the first Butterfield record, I mean, that really took off pretty quick. So you guys were probably playing some pretty nice gigs when you were on the road.
It was an odd mixture of gigs at first.
Okay.
People didn't really know quite what to make of us, you know. They tried to get us to wear uniforms, you know, the first few gigs, and we would play sometimes in a jazz club, sometimes in a folk club, you know, and to various levels of enthusiasm or disapproval, you know.
Right. Is it true that you guys gave Bill Graham, you know, some tips and contacts for bringing people from Chicago to the Fillmore?
Yeah. He asked our opinion because he could see that it was going to be a happening thing. And we talked him into getting B.B. and Albert King, Freddie King, and those guys, Magic Sam. And
cool. Did you ever get to be on bills with Albert?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I got a picture in my studio shaking hands with Albert King, and he's in front of his bus. I think he was trying to sell me his bus, but I don't know.
Yeah. And let's just talk about gear for a minute. Your 59 345, old Red Dog. When did you get that?
I got the first one from Louis Myers.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was the type of thing that in those days we used to say, well, every 5 years, either the thieves or the airlines get it, you know?
Yeah.
Which didn't matter that much because you could go to any pawn shop and just buy another one for a reasonable price for many years. And finally, they got to be like now. It's ridiculous.
Did you choose the 345 because you like the baritone? As opposed
I liked that because I could back it off, and I always had too heavy of a touch, I thought at the time, you know, for playing rhythm. I could back it off and it would thin out the sound, you know.
Yeah.
But the basic reason I loved it is because it had a great sustain for slide. Yeah. You could play like the G string and the B string, it would just ring for days, you know.
Wow. Well, Elvin, I want to thank you, man. And I mean, I could talk to you and ask you questions for hours. And next time I see you in person, I will.
Anytime, man. There's one thing that I wanted to mention to you about me and Charlie. Because people always say, well, you guys must have been real good friends back in Chicago. It really wasn't like that. It's like you were saying about the 100 blues clubs. You get in with a bunch of guys that you hung out with, and you'd have your own circuit of clubs, and 5, 6 different clubs that you go to. For instance, Charlie used to see Wolf and Sonny Boy all the time. He was telling me. Yeah, I never saw Sonny Boy, but he just had a different circuit of clubs. But he was there the same time I was, and he was active and going around. Getting and doing the good shit, you know. So that makes it more fun. Like on the shows, we just we sit down and sometimes we'll get reminiscing. And the people that come to see, we're preaching to the choir, you know. The people that come to see us at like these performing arts centers, they kind of like to hear us talking about the stuff, and I get interested just asking Charlie about stuff that I never saw, you know, and things in places he was at and everything. There's that. Yeah, I mean, I was just excited to talk to you and hear stories about coming up in Chicago, and it's great. And I just remembered who I wanted to ask you about, Little Walter. Did you see Little Walter a lot? Did you know him? I got to play behind him one time. Wow. I don't think he was real comfortable. in a white situation, you know. And I don't know, he just always seemed like real nervous and like that when I saw him, or maybe just found out about certain things before most of us did. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've seen him play some harp like at Peppers that were just unearthly.
Really?
And I think he had some positions that nobody else used on the harp.
Yeah.
I think he could draw a note down farther than anybody else, but he was, powerful.
Yeah. And you got to back him up and play some shows with him, some club gigs.
No, it was in a jam situation.
Yeah.
It was at the University of Chicago. They used to have what they call twist parties there on Wednesday nights. And different people would come and sit in, you know. And Walter came one time.
Yeah.
And he got up there and did a couple tunes, and I just backed him up as good as I could, you know, just crowbar stuff. Wow.
Thanks again, man. Thanks for doing all you do for the blues and putting out great records and still touring when you can. I hope you get back on the road like everyone else next year.
Yeah, it's it must be rough on young guys who were just getting ready to make their move, you know, and
yeah,
had to cancel all the great gigs for the summer and
I know,
sitting home and grinding their gears. That's rough.
Yeah, it's a brutal time, but you know, better days ahead. And
yeah,
stay healthy, my friend. And all right, take good care.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So long.